Where I came from, I thought that we were, and I still believe that at the bottom of my heart, a relational people.
We have the right to self-government, to self-determination of land. And the people that are here are going to go back and continue the struggle. This is not an end, it's only a beginning.
Possibly could. The fact is that to think that there is a segment of our population, the youngest and the fastest growing, that is living a quality of life substantially less, receiving less funding for education, for healthcare, for welfare, that's just wrong. It's morally wrong. And it's
I mean, Metis, as far as I know my Metis family, we live off the land.
I would like to see in the Accord the two following principles. The principle that there must be recognition of a land base for the Aboriginal peoples.
And who believes that every person of native ancestry, from whatever Indian stock and from whatever corner of this great country, has a special place in the Constitution in Section 35.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the summer. Spring's coming, snow is melting, leaves are coming out, and you're going to be spending a lot of time, hopefully like I am, outdoors enjoying the land. You know, it's nothing better than this time of year. The frost comes out of the ground when you can get out there and start planting the corn, the squash, and whatever is your favorite thing to grow in your garden. But I wanted to come and talk to you a little bit today about an interview that was done a while back by the president of the Manitoba Métis Federation. I want you to take some time this summer, as the season gets nicer, to reflect on some of the real facts regarding Métis politics, Métis identity, Métis issues that we're going to should be sitting down over the course of the summer around the campfire with our friends and our family to discuss, so that we, you know, after the summer season ends and we get back down to the grind of winter and the snow piling in, and we get over with the festivities, and hopefully, you know, you get to enjoy some powwow and some jigging and a lot of other the great festivities that go on over the summer and then into the fall when the hunt and the harvest starts. We take these times to sit down with our kin, with our relations, to discuss some of these issues. And I wanted to play some segments from this clip and talk to you and with you about them today, because I think it's important. I think it's important that we go into the summer and these seasons and these events with these conversations in mind, so we can build a consensus and build bridges, and we can you know, begin to counter these kinds of conversations. So I'm going to play with a few of these clips and talk about them through the video. So let's get going.
You know, we've evolved and continue to evolve, of defining ourselves more clearly. It's just a matter of there was no stopping us from doing so, because it was, as we always said to ourselves, going back and formulating our Métis government, for example, the Métis Federation, and setting the stage as we move forward and battling rights. Government should have hopefully negotiate these rights with us, you know, and sit down with us, but they force us into the courtrooms. So in doing so, we began to tell ourselves, you know, as we move forward in land claims, for example, you know, it took us 32 years in the land claims case, but other cases, harvesting and so forth. But we began to establish that we need to clearly identify who we are, because as we win these battles and the courts say, well, the Métis have the right to harvest, then who is that Métis? And so we were very confident in the direction we needed to take as leaders, and we set the stage very clearly, the historic boundaries of our homeland, because a nation of a people has to come from an historic place, a land base, a connection to the land.
That's a land base? So in this clip we saw that the definition of Métis is an evolution, and I think that in of itself says a lot. That even historically we can look back at the Federation, the Manitoba Métis Federation specifically in this video, but also the MNA in Alberta and the MNC federally, that the definition and criteria for membership has not only changed, but their definition of what it means to be Métis and who is Métis has changed. And I think that is in regards to exactly what he said, setting the stage. And setting the stage for what? Legal battles. To set a stage is to do exactly that. They had to be prepared, they had to be ready to go to court to defend the idea from their point of view of who is and who is not Métis, and so they did exactly that. They used legal criteria and legal definitions to do exactly what they said they were going to do, set the stage, actors on the stage. And so they use in that assertion that they are the only people with an intrinsic connection to the land, to a specific history, to a specific context for that definition, and I think that's where we get a lot of this evolution taking place. And so when you're going to court and you're going to fight the government for this legal assertion, that's what had to take place. And so I think you see a lot of that in clip 1. So here we go. That's my take on what his comments are there. Clip 2.
The East Coast start to say, well, who am I? Well, let's call ourselves Métis or mixed blood. So I think that gave us already in the 80s a sense, wow, look, these people over here are starting to steal who we are. We need to protect ourselves. So the constitutions of our nation from Ontario West, parts of Ontario too, not all of Ontario. We believe there's only parts of Ontario and parts of British Columbia into the United States and into the Northwest Territories is our historic homeland. And we can prove it and back it up with all the historians that have done the work.
Well, I guess, you know,
the assertion that Métis claim to identity is systemic from only the 80s, as I think is a great inaccuracy. If we look at it, we have much historical evidence. If you go to our website, we'll be posting that evidence there for you to see that the Métis in the East have had an assertion to their identity, land claims, and all these same issues long before the 1980 constitutional discussions. And the very fact that we see this continuous discussion about evolution, that's it right there. The Eastern Métis and Métis in all these other places in Canada have an assertion to identity that exists long before the 80s. And so this kind of context then, because you've set the stage, you've created a legal framework, now that, in this look back, as it were, this, hindsight, they saw this as a threat to their identity. And what that is not a threat so much to identity, it's a threat to the stage you've set. It's a threat to your legal context for which you're going to launch your court cases and definitions. And so when you have other Métis people who also stand up and make the same claim that predates the 80s by a long shot, who can provide historical documentation, historical connection to both community, kin, and the land, and connection to the very definition and term and usage of Métis, it's no wonder they thought it was a threat. They should have been more informed before setting the stage. So that's really the real problem, is when they're using that context, they're saying, oh, this is a threat to our identity, this is a real problem, because look at these Eastern Métis and their historical context and their historical claims, that's a real threat. Well, let's go to the next clip.
The difference really is that, I'll give you a good example. When I went to the United States and visit our Métis families and in the United States, a lot of the names are the same as some of our names here in Manitoba. But the further you go down to meet with our Métis, we got to see a change in the reflection of their understanding of their culture, the way they deprived themselves of advancing their Métis culture. Like in Lewistown and in the United States, where we were there and watching their cultural event, and they were doing a Métis powwow jig, and we've never seen that. So it's clearly intertwined more, because they're called the Chippewas. But if you look at their history, they're truly the Métis people. But their culture kind of was stolen from them, and their identity was stolen from them, because there is no such thing as a Métis in the United States Constitution. So what they define them is the Chippewas. So they try to find themselves as the Chippewas, but yet you look at all of their historical connection in their cultural events. It's the river cart, it's the satch, the fiddle, it's all of us, and even the names and the connection. So you can see how quickly a language or even a culture and identity can start to be, declined or lessened. And so it is very pivotal for us to protect that. And the Eastern Canada and Quebec and others will come out and say, look, I'm Métis. Because I have mixed blood of First Nation and of some other European descent. And we've made it very clear to them, you're not. The courts have sided with them.
So we can see in this clip that the reality is they went down to the States, they saw the people there, they saw they had the same names, the same context, they came from the same, they had, similar ties and family relations, yet they saw that the culture and their cultural expression was very diverse, very different. They even called themselves by a different name, the Chippewa. Well, who are the Chippewa? But yet they saw the same family relations. Why did they see the same family relations? Because they had the same name. They had the same cart, they had the same fiddle, they had the same sash. And so that seems to be okay in the evolution of Métis. You know, so if you come from Red River and you go down to the States, but you have a different practice and you do the powwow, but as long as you're doing it with the sash, the fiddle, and the cart, they'll make the family connections for you. But if you go to Eastern Métis land and you have the fiddle, the sash, and the canoe, or maybe not the cart, but you have the same family names, the same family connections, even as Riel himself traced his family back to the east, oh no, you're not Métis. That's crud. That doesn't make any logical sense at all. So if my family came from Quebec and they were half-breeds or mixed bloods and they moved to Manitoba and were there, and then they moved to the States, well, because they happen to be in Red River, that made them Métis. That makes no sense at all. So we can see that you can call yourself Chippewa and be in the States and be Métis, and you can even do powwow and dress up in all the regalia and be Métis. But if you're in the East, no go. That's an evolutionary flaw. It doesn't track. You know, that's not real logic. You can't make that. So that's like saying, well, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. Either you can have diversity in culture, you can have diversity in your location, and you can have diversity in your expression, or you can't. So either you have to have homogeny, or you can't. So you can't disclaim, hey, I am Métis, but you have to come from here. It doesn't work that way. On to the next clip.
You're talking about. So it's a constant struggle for us as a people, and but we've come a long way. You know, as I said, we have harvesting laws no one else has in this country. I'm very proud of those laws, and we've adopted them through our elders and guidance. We're developing our self-government as we speak, and that's part of self-government, actually having your own Métis laws. So I've really pushed hard in the name of the MMF, and I think we see change happening in Manitoba. The Métis flag flies proudly. We started purchasing a lot of assets since then. Since that time in 1996 to now, from tree staff, we've got over 750 staff today. Wow. And we're growing. And a lot of it's we run our own businesses, a lot of it. We have our own pharmacy now. We have different institutions of businesses we're managing. We have buildings we're buying throughout. And
well, you see the MMF as a government. You know, like we have the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs here. You know, that's a lobby group. You know, the Assembly of First Nations is a lobby group.
Yes.
You see the MMS as a government. Can you explain that?
Well, again, it's their political design is different than ours. Yeah. Actually, I'm elected by the people, directly by the people, province-wide, and our governance structure is completely different, and we are a government. There's no ifs or buts about it. The institutions of the bodies of the First Nations have been designed differently, that their governments are the individual reserves and the chiefs and the councils. Then they have tribal entities and so forth that go all the way up to the Assembly and AFNs and Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. But those are exactly lobby groups. But their governance is down at the reserve section. Yeah. Us, we're a province-wide government, and when we speak, we speak on behalf of all the Métis of this province. Yeah. And it's not by, you know, in Manitoba, I think there's 60-something reserves that they individually speak for each other themselves. And I speak on behalf of all Métis people in Manitoba when I speak as no different than Premier of Manitoba. In fact, my challenge is he gets elected by a delegate system. Yeah. I get elected by the people. So I think we have greater power and greater authority that we have directly from our citizens. But so our governance model is very important. But you know the irony of all that, the federal government has tried so many times to break that process. Because I'm president and chief executive officer of my government, because I'm responsible. At the end of the day, the buck falls on my paper. That's it. There's no getting away from that. And I have a cabinet as any other government. But the government has been trying to say you can't be president and CEO, or else we're not going to fund you. Then don't fund us, because you're not going to change our constitution, change our ideology of what our government is and what we stand for and what we're going to build. So we'll never break away from that, and it's very important to us. So we are different by far from the First Nation. But going back to this issue, we've worked hard in Manitoba to build our name brand, and our name brand is made a lot of great strides. And today we're.
So in this clip, we see that the Manitoba Métis Federation is claiming to be government, a real government. And the contrast is they're saying that First Nations is a lobby group. So I'm not disagreeing that the AFN by large is a lobby group, but just because they're a lobby group does not make the MMF or the MNC a government. And so their claim to governance is that they have all the things that make a government. So you have a constitution, then you're a government. If you have a cabinet, you're a government. If you have ministers, you're a government. If you have a chief and council, you're not government. If you govern by community or by First Nations band, then you're not real government when you're talking to the colonial government. So if you have 20 bands that get together on a certain issue to go to the government, that's not government, that's lobby. What kind of colonial horse crap is that? So the only real form of government is colonial government. If you don't have a president, if you don't have a cabinet, if you don't have ministers, and you don't have portfolios for those ministers, you don't have a real government. You just have a lobby group. Well, it's no wonder we got so many problems in our relationship with First Nations and Métis people. To say that a First Nations band, now I'm not a big proponent of chief and council as a real form of government by any stretch, but let's not, get all bent out of shape here about which colonial institution best constitutes a form of government. That's nuts. The fact that the MMF when this video was done employed 750 people and still it claims to be a government is ridiculous. So, when they talk about, I have more right to government than the premier of the province of Manitoba because he's elected by the party, and the president of any Métis organization is elected by the people, as some kind of justification for how that's a more democratic process and therefore more legitimate form of government than the crown, and that then by definition makes chief and council and local administration less of a government? Wow, have we lost the plot or what? That is ridiculous semantics. So chief and council, not government. Local community, not government. So unless it's provincial or federal, you don't have real government. That is the very definition of colonialism. And by Métis people adopting this as a foundation for our Indigenous identity, to say that the only vision we ever had is exactly colonial politics and the colonial adaptation of this kind of government for ourselves is the way forward. Probably why we got problems. When the recent budget is going to be, about $500 million for the MMF in the coming year, I'm pretty sure you're going to watch their numbers balloon from 750 a lot further north. $500 million, and we can talk about governmental administration and programs and pharmacies and all the programs, but we're still not seeing any land. We're not seeing any, real intrinsic push forward on our rights. We're seeing a lot of talk about bureaucracy and a lot of talk about government programming. A lot of access to maybe things under Section 91 there, but we're not seeing any Section 35 push forward. No Indigenous sovereignty, no Métis self-right to self-determination, and definitely not the return of any lands at a $500 million budget for one province. And I think that's the real problem. So I hope you take some time this summer to think about it. What does the evolution of the term Métis mean? What is the propagation of the brand of the MNC's vision for the Métis mean? What should it mean? If the word Métis no longer is inclusive of all of us mixed blood half-breeds, but is strictly the brand of the MNC and its organizational structure, is it true then that the only form of governance that should be recognized is the colonial structure? If you don't have a president and you don't have a minister, and you don't have a portfolio, then you don't have a real government. Is that what we're going to do? Is that the way forward for the Métis people? We need to have some hard conversations. We need to find unity in our communities and restore traditional values. Because if this is the way forward, by people forming organization after organization claiming to be, the big uniting factor, they're going to be the next organization to bring us all together, we got problems. We got real problems if duplicating crown governance for Indigenous people is the way forward. If $500 million provincial budgets for these organizations isn't in the restoration of the land, the protection of the water, the protection of the four-legged and the two-winged creatures, then what is the point? We've lost the plot. And I think we really need to start, holding these ideas to account. Or we allow this slippery slope of revisionism, of historical mismanagement of context. It's only been since the 80s. It hasn't been since the 80s. I mean, I'm a little older than the 80s. I might not have been there, but I can, you know, pretty easily post on our website some documents for that. And so take some time. Is the MNC vision of the evolution of the term Métis, are they right? Is Harry Daniels wrong in his clip that we posted at the beginning of this video that every person who's Indigenous has a place in the Constitution? Was he wrong? Is the MNC right then? That only the mixed blood people who can lay claim to Red River deserve recognition in that Constitution under Section 35? That mixed blood people of any ancestry don't fit inside the Constitution? That's what this boils down to. This is the conversation we need to have. So I look forward to your comments. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, please share. Let me know what you think. Above all, enjoy the land. Get out there, spend some time with Mother Nature. Until next time, keep it real.